Hey, Status D, please like and subscribe. Please click on the deck heroes icon, click on subscribe. It's 100% free. Blood in, blood out. And don't forget to click on the notifications just so you don't miss any amazing content. Okay, I thought I would do a video on the US election. I did cover it to a certain extent. I kind of got drawn in, even though I never intended my channel to be anything serious. But at the end of the day, I do have a degree in psychology and a master's in economics, and I've got a qualification in politics as well. And I do follow US politics reasonably closely, so I thought I'd do a video, and it was good fun. Don't know if I want to do a video, or I don't know if this video is going to talk about why I think the Orange Man actually won in the end, because I don't want to pee anybody off. But a lot of the people that I know were pro the Orange Man, and you may well be surprised. I'm surprised, let alone you've been surprised, and I don't know your experience in terms of your circle, whether they, were upfront about being, as I say, pro that man. The things that they tended to come up with, say females and men, were kind of a dissatisfaction with changes and concessions towards the LGBTQ, and particularly the trans thing, in terms of encroaching on female spaces. I think there was a lot of misinformation as well about the policies that Biden was in favor of in terms of prisoners and gender change and things like that. And I think fundamentally as well, and I'm sure you've seen it, the Christian pastors out there which are very pro this, sexual offender, and so he's broken his vows, his wedding marriage vows many times, and what else? The million other things that he talks about, just grabbing women by the toot, and everything else. But for some reason they're on his side, and he was saying his daughter was a piece of ass. And then, oh my gosh, man, and just deporting a lot of immigrants and not kind of assessing each case on their merits. But these Christian leaders or kind of pastors on televangelists, the ones that are on the TV, look past all that and in favour of the man that's kind of making that happen. But regardless, I think that whole kind of Democrats owning that right to life debate, what side they were on, I think that is very anti the Christian message. I'm not a Christian. I'm not religious at all. I'm just saying about the reasons why I think the orange guy won. And I think for the people that I've talked to, and I think that was a fundamental, even though, and I know Trump didn't solve it, if Trump would have kind of repealed it in some way, and then he would have solved it, but he left it to the states, which made it a lot harder. And I understand, especially after Michelle Obama's speech, about the real implications in terms of not only will that, not in every case, not only potentially will that fetus die, but also the mother that's with it. For example, if it fertilizes in the wrong place and things like that, you know what I mean? And doctors are scared to operate. All of those things, regardless, I think most Christians are of the point of view that they are anti anybody who kind of leads with that right, the right of a woman to choose. You know what I mean? It's for the Christians that I know anyway, it was a step too far. So that was that. Next stage of this video. What do I think? There's many things that I think are going to happen now, and they're all negative. All negative. There's actually a list of about between 50 and 100 things. I've narrowed it down to just 5. So the first thing I think that's going to happen, Trump's actually got the concept of a plan, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's kind of rumours about, I'm talking about NATO now, the breakdown of NATO and global instability, which I don't believe that people didn't know was going to happen. Okay, so we've got this kind of brinksmanship, kind of cavalier attitude towards the potential extinction of life. But people who are not the world, the military experts. I'm not a military expert. That's why I leave it to the military people. Trump's an everydayer. You know what I mean? He's going to be getting briefings from, anyway, he's going to be getting briefings from these generals who have come out to say, who have come out in the past and said, we had to rein this guy in because he's just going to go and trigger something and do something disproportionate. But that's not actually what I'm talking about. That's going to be bad, and there's going to be losers because there's not going to be anybody to rein him in this time. Not this time around, because he's aware of what happens when people don't follow his orders through for the greater good. But now it's just going to be, well, that man has no boundaries and no limits. That man has no boundaries and no limits. So whoever could potentially be an enemy, there's nobody to rein him in, and that could happen. So they need to plan accordingly. So what conversations are they having right now? I'm just thinking right now, in the Middle East, who's going to be a friend to NATO? Who's going to be a friend to America? And if that option is most definitely not the foreseeable for the 4 years, which side of the fence are they likely to go on? So basically, are we empowering our enemies by giving those people who would be in the middle and just keep to themselves, or would be on our side, and giving them no choice but to go to that side because there's a madman in America who they know is hostile and at any time could do something devastating to them? You know what I mean? So we just don't know. But in any case, before getting into those kind of smaller points, what I think is going to happen is Trump has made it very conditional about how he's going to be involved with NATO. And he's not a reliable person who you know where you stand with him, right? So our enemies don't know where they stand with him. Us, in terms of Europe, we don't know where we stand with him. So we can't rely on him. Okay? So how strong or how weak is NATO? We don't know where we stand on an issue. Historically, we all know that America leads in terms of world peace and the current status quo. So if he, well, it is he, isn't it? Being the orange guy. If America withdraws, who's going to fill that vacuum? It ain't going to be Europe or any of those individual European nations. I think there are issues about the whole thing about even considering Ukraine for NATO, and what the hell Zelensky was even thinking about. And I'm not sure if he'd been given any assurances. I can't remember about that he would have been backed up. But that didn't. If he did have assurances from NATO or whatever European countries that he'll be backed up if he was to kind of risk peeing off Putin, having NATO on his doorstep, become what likely response Russia was going to have to give. You know what I mean? Even if he had that, but if he had that assurance, he made a very bad miscalculation, kind of believing it. You know what I mean? And the rest is kind of panned out as it is. But anyway, so we've got a weak NATO. Who fills that gap? May or not be Russia right now. It might be Russia right now. But what form would that look like? Is now the time for the Chinas to step on, kind of throwing their weight around? And who would stop them? At the end of the day, who would stop them? In terms of Russia going into Ukraine, did America try and stop them? He said to go and take it. And there's a rumor now was given, was it 24 hours? You know what I mean? So what happens between now and when Trump takes office? You know what I mean? Is it like carte blanche? Is he going to say to them, for instance, you can now, them being Ukraine, you can now do long range missiles into Russia? Even if he gave that, what do you think that Putin's going to just kind of say, I'm going to think twice now? Or is Putin, he's a world power, he's got nuclear weapons, just nuke it if he wanted to, and just make it absolutely unlivable, and say, okay, well, yeah, try settling there now, and then he would have guaranteed the border to Russia. I don't want him to do it, but we're kind of forcing him down that route. But again, it's that kind of the withdrawal of the West, led by America in having our current stability. So what we've got now is instability and uncertainty. And to say, when we've got that vacuum, somebody will step in that mix may well be Russia, and it may well be China, and it's probably going to be backed by the North Korea. You know, historically, how the UK, I point to ourselves, like the UK, we back America in most wars historically, and we're very good at it. Got some great soldiers, some great techs, and great equipment, and Britain has ruled the world at one stage, the empire. Britain's good at wars, and we back up the United States, and we don't do it out of some kind of kind will. We do it for trade. We do it for trade, I believe, anyway, right? I reckon North will be will be to Russia and China as the UK is to America, or was to America. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if there's any merit in that anymore. They may well still try, but with Trump, it may mean something. It may mean nothing. It might mean something in the moment, but as I say, the moment that you disagree with this man, as I say, he seems to be quite petty. You know what I mean? And takes everything as an affront. He just wants yes men around him, and he just wants yes countries around him. Otherwise, there's going to be very unfavourable terms. And I think that's another thing which is going to be, it's not on my list of 5 things, but anyway, yeah, the breakdown of NATO and global instability, and I say that power vacuum from a weaker NATO, who steps into it, but it's not going to be us. It's not going to be us in the West, I don't think. Unless Europe rises up and unites, which it historically hasn't done, and I don't think it will do. Anyway, another thing I think is going to happen is connected to an increased cost of living, and there's going to be some. I've got a master's in economics, so what I predict is going to happen, and I don't know. Say Trump's got the concept of a plan, right? But I heard he was going to slash or remove any kind of tax on overtime. Okay, so effectively, the everyday man has got more money. So in economics, there's talked about supply and demand, right? So there'll be increased demand for, say, household goods because people have got more money. But it's not as easy to. I know this is going to be very basic for anybody who's got a background in economics, right? But it's much harder to increase the supply. You know what I mean? You need to produce those goods, and once you've gone through your inventory, as I say, there's this production lag, right? Even if it's like shipping times and things like that. But in any case, if there's a perception that the people have got more money than what you have existing capacity, that's the circumstances which leads to inflation. In many ways, that's called demand pull inflation. Demand's gone up, it's pulled inflation up. Effectively, what could happen in that situation is demand goes up by, say, 10, which pulls up inflation by a near comparable amount at the end of the day. Because what economics is meant to do is have a balance between the number of goods and money. You know what I mean? Which is going to meet in some kind of equilibrium. And say when you take that out of equilibrium, it will find equilibrium again, just so you don't run out of all goods on day one. I think that's what's going to happen. So people are going to be frustrated by thinking, I've got more money, but how come I'm still struggling? And the reason why they're still going to be struggling is because that extra unearned money, that kind of almost giveaway money, is going to push up prices by a near equivalent amount to what they've earned. But I'm pretty sure they're going to be spending more money, believing that they're actually richer, whereas they're not. So they're going to be more or less on the same, maybe slightly richer, but I think they'll be spending more than what their wealth has gone up, and that's going to lead to a frustration. But the question is, they're already blaming Biden for today's economy, which is doing well by the metrics. Will they blame Trump? I don't know if they would. They'll blame something else, but we will see. But these are the predictions we're making. So the breakdown of NATO, more global instability, there's going to be increased inflation, even though technically people will be earning more. There's going to be some frustration that comes from it. With increased inflation, what governments tend to do in order to control inflation is to increase interest rates to kind of have a disincentive to spending. It makes borrowing more expensive, and there's lots of other reasons as well. But increasing interest rates, if you own your own home, your mortgage is likely to go up as well. So that's going to be another thing. So price is going to go up. I reckon interest rates will go up, which means the cost of living, because you'll be spending more than what your income has increased, you're actually going to feel poorer, especially once the interest rates are going up to try and deal with the inflation. Anyway, let's move on. I think there's going to be an increase, which is number 3, an increase in racial intolerance. I think things have been more polarized since the orange man has come into politics, and he keeps on sending people down there. First it was the birthers with Obama's true nationality. It's obviously American. We know that he knows he's American, but he's putting out these kind of little secret messages, which has led people to this point that nah. You know what I mean? It's okay to kind of be racist at the end of the day. Somebody is American, you're insisting that he's not an American, knowing that he is. That's a racist thing to do. Of course it is, denying somebody's citizenship and entitlement to be in that country. But I think that's going to feed through from the top down. So with a man like Trump, you're in a situation where you can't have any dissenting voices. So there's going to be racial intolerance at the top, and anywhere near to Trump, he's not going to have any black people at all, or people of color at all, or just on the periphery. And there's going to be like the smallest token amount, and they're not going to be saying anything. They're not going to dare, same as everybody else to be fair, but they're not going to dare to dissent from anything that Trump's got to say. And if they do, gone. But that's going to filter down. That kind of culture that there's only certain faces which can be tolerated at the top, and everybody else is a higher based on their ethnicity. It's already established that. There's the repeal of all the civil rights legislation as well. The majority of the country is voting for Trump, knowing that he's been convicted of a sexual crime, and the intolerance to all people of different countries, from shithole nations and people coming over there and polluting the bloodlines, all this kind of rhetoric. We know where he stands on things, okay? This prevailing culture of racial intolerance will mean that those people which fit into those brackets in the minorities, basically, when they go for jobs with somebody who's racially intolerant, or where there's a culture of racial intolerance, they're less likely to be successful. And the ones that are there, they may well be struggling a little bit harder to hold on to that job, because that's that negative perception of people of colour. And who are you going to complain to? There's no civil rights legislation. And even if they didn't repeal it, which they are going to, when you get your own men in there, when Trump gets these Proud Boy type far right wing sympathiser men, may or may not be Proud Boys, but the ones that sympathise with his ideology, which is on the far right, your complaints are going to go on deaf ears. That man was talking about having a purge from the police. Was he serious or was he not? When he was protesting, I think it was the George Floyd, and there's a peaceful protest, and Trump was trying to get the National Guard and actual soldiers to to challenge American citizens on American streets in a peaceful protest, and he's sending out soldiers. The moment that the soldiers are confronting the people, that will happen. That's going to happen in the next 4 years. At some point, say once an atrocity's happened and people are protesting on the streets, if he manages to get the actual army of whatever level on the streets and they've got guns, there will be deaths and people injured by the army firing on its own citizens, and that's going to be normalized. And I don't even think it's going to be challenged by the majority, by the mob. I say the mob are going back to, the times of Rome, where the masses, the uncultured masses, they kind of bay for blood, and it goes beyond kind of considered debate. I'm kind of touching on misinformation now, which is a very important. I'm not trying to piss people off, trust me. But I say baying to popularism is not what we're looking for. We just want considered debate. And if the majority agree with the outcome of considered debate, no problem whatsoever. But yeah, definitely racial intolerance, that's already there. It's going to be there for 4 years. And it's going to be a struggle to wind that back. I see, yeah. Once all those kind of positions which should be kind of performing oversight are filled with people who actually want it to go further than what it has, or go to the absolute furthest of the right wing, there's nobody to complain to. There you go. Number 4. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. There's going to be those yes men. There's going to be those yes men. On any kind of, and anything that dissents from where Trump's position is will not be tolerated. Will not be tolerated. Currently, America's in a position where you got freedom of speech. There's been a lot made of that. I think there's going to be freedom of speech as long as you agree with your king, with your new king, with your new dictator, Trump. As long as you agree with him, of course you've got free speech. But there will be this culture where you cannot speak out against anything which is against the rules. And that the rules will be set by the orange man himself. Already at the top level, Trump's going to go after his political opponents. That's political opponents. That's people who conceptually disagree with him. Conceptually disagree with him. He's going after them. And those are the ones in full view. How easy is it going to be to go after the little man? So he's not really bothered about the little man right now. But what's going to happen as we get close to the 4 years? Assuming that he's still in good health. I think we're going to have a Biden situation, even if he was in bad health, where he's propped up by others and he becomes the puppet of somebody else. But as we get to the end of 4 years, do we think he's going to honor the Constitution? Or do we think he's going to desperately try and hold on to power, whether he overrides the Constitution or not? And he's got all his people in positions which will enable that to happen. That's terrifying. I'm not even in America. That's terrifying. America, oh man. America used to have so much influence on the world, and it's going to become insular. But going back to point number 1 about NATO, what happens in the rest of the world will impact America down the line. And America's kind of ignoring the fact that it led on NATO. So it is NATO because it leads on NATO, and all the other countries subsidize America. It's not America subsidizing the other countries. In order for America to maintain its position of global leader and maintaining the status quo, other countries chip in to make that happen. But now you've got these segmented, individual, bickering European nations who are somehow meant to come together, even though historically they have not done it, apart from in the 2 world wars. To come together and maintain world order, which is just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And eventually that vacuum will be taken up by, I said this going back to what I said earlier, the Chinas or the Russias, but basically not America. And then there'll be all those versus America. And that's when you've got this madman with his finger on the button, and he's going to feel that he has to do it. But it's his actions which have brought it about. Anyway, in terms of the day-to-day, I think people will vote in just to see what happens, and feeling that it would not impact them. It will impact them. It's going to impact them very soon, as I said, because there can be no dissenting voices which contradict the king. And I'm not talking about Charles, I'm talking about Trump, for the people who live in America. and even for the leaders in other countries, including the UK, they're going to have to be sucking up to Trump. So they're going to have to realign their strategy about, about that losing game. It's going to be a losing game. He's not going to try and meet anybody in the middle. What does anybody think that Trump's going to have a conversation where he's trying to get a deal, say with the UK or anywhere, where he's trying to meet you in the middle and be fair? Or is he going to try and leverage position to take as much as possible? And which is why we didn't have a trade deal of the last 4 years, or the 4 years of Trump anyway. That's the reason why. No significant trade deal anyway. That's been brought to my attention. That's number 4. I think the 5th thing, which kind of touches on everything else, is America will have a closer alignment with Putin already. One of the first people that he spoke to was Putin. And it's amazing how people are not worried. I mean, has there been an American president who's been more closely aligned and he's kind of like, he sent a love letter to Kim Jong-un for starts, and I know which is North Korea, and just cozying up to Putin and saying nice things. And I think he must think that he's going to try and sway Putin. Putin is not of the West. He's not of a Western mentality. He's ex-KGB. He sees right through weak people like Trump, who are all about ego. He will use his ego to send him wherever he wants him to send him. I wish that was kind of front of mind before, in the minds of the electors, as well as all the 2 indictments and all the felony charges and not paying any tax and falsifying records about places that he's trying to take loans on and everything else. But when I think about the documents and how they went about it, they've been, I can't remember what the custodians are called now, but they notified him, they gave him a lot of time, he lied that he actually handed them back, and then obviously they knew that he hadn't, so they had to go and collect them, and he had boxes and boxes and boxes of thousands of documents. So he either hadn't checked or he's trying to withhold them, and a lot of them were top secret. Got him in his toilet. But he has this cozy relationship with Kim Jong-un and Putin. Let's think about this again as well. There's Kim Jong-un, Asian. China, Asian. Trump feels that he can have a relationship though with Putin. Trump's a right-winger. Trump has faith in people that mirror his image in terms of being Anglo-Saxon, being white. If you even looked at the debt, China holds the highest portion out of all other countries of America's debt. And I don't remember seeing Russia's might be on the list somewhere. I can't recall seeing it. China number 1, but he's cozying up to Putin. But I think he will try and have a closer alignment, and I do also think, and it won't be reported because I don't know. People are not interested in that. It won't be reported in America, but maybe in Europe, and likely to be in the UK. To be fair, he's going to be manipulated, and of course he's going to spin it. He's going to try and spin it to be something else than what it is. But Trump is the guy who is suggesting to inject bleach. He's not a smart man, and is a 6-time bankrupt. So he's not even a good businessman. At best, he does tax giveaways and was it the stimulus checks? That's again demand push. That's demand. What's it called now? The demand-based economics, basically. So you put more money into people's hands, they spend. If you're spending more, you have to produce more. It creates more jobs. You know what I mean? And more jobs, more services, more actual physical things or services with that money, it stimulates the economy. Wow, that's great, yeah? What about your debt? Blinkers. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. I will do a tidier video. So I've got like about 100 things which were promised and problematic about Trump. This is just 5 that came to mind. Thought I'd do a video just because it's very worrying and it's looming and it's very topical. But you know, I'm worried about it. It is going to impact us in the UK, but kind of worried about it, but kind of not because I'm in the UK. I'm not there. I do fear for everybody who's of color or in a minority in that country, especially, and also even if you're not, the Liz Cheneys, people who've devoted their lives to America, and it's worth zero. Worth zero. And I'm thinking about the that constitution that America's held so true and is kind of the center of everybody's hearts. Zero. When you go to Hamilton, just don't worry. When you go to Hamilton, just don't forget about it. What's it called now? The top guy in Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton. All for naught, my friend. It lasted a while. But there's this old orange man who just made it zero. Zero. And there's so many things in that constitution, and then the free speech and everything else, which is just going to be ignored. Or there'll be a new norm. Anyway, please like, subscribe. There's Stephen, man.